The massive space station called Concordia floated in the darkness between stars. It was bigger than most moons and home to the Galactic Assembly. Today, delegates from 847 different species had gathered for an emergency meeting. The air in the great chamber buzzed with tension. Ambassador Elena Vasquez sat straight in her chair. She was a human woman in her 50s, with gray hair and calm eyes. Next to her sat two other humans, Dr. James Park and Captain Lisa Rodriguez. They were the only three humans in a room filled with thousands of alien beings. The chamber was huge, with curved walls that stretched up toward a domed ceiling. Rows of seats went down like steps toward the center, where a platform held the speaking podium. Each species had their own section, with special air and gravity to keep them comfortable. Some breathed methane, others needed high pressure, and a few floated in tanks of liquid. Chancellor Vexthari of the Zethkri stood at the podium. He was tall and thin with blue-gray skin and 4 arms. His species had led the galaxy for over 2,000 years. Today, his voice carried across the chamber through translators. "The vote is complete," Chancellor Vexthari announced. 743 species vote yes. Only 1 votes no. The humans have been outvoted by an overwhelming majority. Elena felt her jaw tighten. The vote was about Protocol 7, a set of rules that would stop humans from expanding to new worlds. It would also force them to give up most of their military ships and accept alien observers on every human planet. Protocol 7 will now be explained to the human delegate, the Chancellor continued. His tone was cold and formal. Humans will be limited to their current 23 star systems. No new colonies may be established. Human military forces will be reduced by 70%. Galactic observers will monitor all human activities. A murmur of approval swept through the chamber. Many species had feared human expansion since they joined the galactic community 30 years ago. Humans built fast, fought hard, and never seemed to know when to stop. Other species took centuries to colonize a single world. Humans could terraform a planet in decades. Elena stood up slowly. The chamber fell quiet. Even the strange humming sounds from the insectoid delegates stopped. "Ambassador Vasquez," Chancellor Vexthari said, "do you accept these terms on behalf of humanity?" Elena looked around the chamber. She saw fear in many faces. The crystalline ethereals glowed brighter when nervous. The plant-like Verdani rustled their leaves. Even the confident cat-like Felixians had their ears pinned back. "Chancellor," Elena said, her voice carrying clearly through the translators, "I need to understand something. You fear us because we expand quickly. You fear us because we are good at war. You fear us because we do not think the same way you do." "That is correct," the Chancellor replied. "Humans are unpredictable. Your species shows aggressive patterns that threaten galactic stability." Elena nodded slowly. "I see. So your solution is to put us in a cage." "Think of it as protective boundaries," said Ambassador Kethri of the Zethkri, speaking from his seat. "For the good of all species, including humans." "Protection," Elena repeated the word quietly. She looked at Dr. Park and Captain Rodriguez. Both humans had the same calm expression she wore. It was the look humans got when they were very, very angry, but trying to stay polite. "Chancellor Vestari, honored delegates," Elena said, standing straighter. "I want to make sure I understand correctly. You believe humans are dangerous. You believe we cannot be trusted. You believe we must be controlled for your safety." "Yes," several delegates called out from different sections. "And you believe that caging us, watching us, and limiting our growth will solve this problem?" "It will contain the threat," the Chancellor confirmed. Elena smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the kind of smile that made smart people very nervous. "I have been a diplomat for 28 years, Elena said. "I have worked very hard to build trust between humanity and the galaxy. I have spent my entire career trying to show you that humans can be reasonable partners. She paused and looked around the chamber again. Every eye was on her. But I have learned something important today. You do not want partners. You want pets. You do not want cooperation. You want control. You do not want to understand us. You want to change us into something that makes you feel safe. The chamber was completely silent now. Even the automated systems seemed quieter. Chancellor, I need to tell you something about humans, Elena continued. We have never accepted cages. Not from our own governments. Not from our own religions. Not from our own families. We certainly will not accept them from strangers who admit they fear and distrust. Yes. Elena reached down and picked up the small case that held her diplomatic credentials. Dr. Park and Captain Rodriguez stood up and gathered their own materials. The species of Earth do not accept cages, Elena said clearly, regardless of how pretty you try to make them. The three humans began walking toward the exit. Their footsteps echoed in the silent chamber. As they reached the door, Elena turned back one final time. Consider this the only warning you will receive, she said. Then the humans were gone. For a long moment, nobody moved. Chancellor Vex Thari stood frozen at the podium. The delegates sat in stunned silence. Finally, Ambassador Kethri spoke up. Well, that went better than expected. They accepted defeat gracefully enough. But older delegates, those whose species had ruled the galaxy for millennia, felt a chill that had nothing to do with the climate controls. The Mentari Empire's ancient representative slowly turned his massive head toward the exit where the humans had disappeared. I do not think, he said in his deep, rumbling voice, that we have just witnessed acceptance. I fear we have just declared war on the only species that has never learned how to surrender. The chamber erupted in arguments, but it was too late. The humans were gone, and somewhere deep in space, Elena Vasquez was already sending a coded message back to Earth. The message was short and simple. Directive 7. Come home. The galaxy had made its choice. Now it would learn what that choice really meant. The message reached every corner of human space at exactly the same time. It came through emergency channels that had never been used before. On farming colonies, in space stations, aboard merchant ships, and on distant research outposts, humans stopped what they were doing and listened. Directive 7. Come home. That was all. No explanation, no discussion, no debate. Just coordinates for Earth and a timeline 6 months. Every human in the galaxy understood what it meant. They were leaving on New Shanghai, the bustling trade hub that connected 3 major shipping routes. Human civilians began packing. The colony had 2 million people and had taken 15 years to build. Now, in less than a week, the shutdown began. Maria Santos owned a restaurant that served the best food in the sector. Aliens traveled for weeks just to eat there. She had spent 12 years building her business. Now she was selling her equipment and closing forever. Why are you leaving? Asked a regular customer, a friendly trader from the Felixian Confederation. The Assembly's new rules don't apply to businesses. Maria smiled sadly as she packed her grandmother's cooking pots. My government called. When Earth calls, humans answer. The same scene played out across 23 star systems. Factories that had run for decades shut down in days. Farms that fed entire sectors were abandoned. Research stations that had solved galactic problems for years went dark. Dr. Sarah Kim was the lead scientist on Kepler Station, where humans had been working on a cure for the Zarati plague. The disease had killed billions across the galaxy, but her team was close to a breakthrough. She received the recall order while running her final tests. Her alien colleagues begged her to stay. You could save countless lives, pleaded Dr. Vorthik, a reptilian scientist she had worked with for 8 years. "I know," Sarah said quietly as she deleted her research files. "But my people need me more." The galactic intelligence networks went crazy trying to understand what was happening. Spy satellites tracked human ships as they gathered at rally points. Every vessel, from massive cargo haulers to small personal craft, was heading toward the borders of known space. Ambassador Elena Vasquez now commanded the operation from the human dreadnought Indomitable. The ship was one of 12 that humans had built since joining the galactic community. Other species had laughed at human ships, calling them primitive and overbuilt. Now those same ships were coordinating the largest evacuation in galactic history. "Status report," Elena requested from the bridge. Captain Rodriguez looked up from her displays. 73% of civilians evacuated. All military assets have withdrawn to rally points. Economic shutdown is ahead of schedule. Elena nodded. She had traded her diplomat's uniform for a simple gray jumpsuit. The polite ambassador was gone. In her place stood something that reminded the crew why humans had conquered their own planet before reaching for the stars. The galaxy began to feel the effects immediately. The vegan trade route, which carried luxury goods across half the galaxy, collapsed when human shipping companies withdrew their vessels. The route had depended on human navigation computers and their willingness to fly through dangerous space. On Altair Prime, hospitals faced a crisis when human pharmaceutical companies stopped delivering medicines. Human scientists had created drugs that worked for dozens of different alien biologies. Now those supplies were gone. The worst hit were the frontier worlds. Human engineers had been the only ones willing to work in dangerous areas, building infrastructure on planets that other species considered too risky. Mining colonies that depended on human expertise found themselves cut off and struggling. In the Galactic Assembly, emergency sessions were called daily. The economic reports were getting worse. Trade was down 30% and falling. Several sectors were reporting shortages of critical supplies. "This is temporary," Chancellor Vexthari insisted during one heated session. "They will return when they realize they need galactic trade to survive." But Ambassador Kethri was studying the intelligence reports with growing concern. "They are not behaving like refugees," he said slowly. "Look at these movement patterns. This is not panic. This is organization." The report showed that humans were not fleeing randomly. They moved in groups, following carefully planned routes. They took specific equipment and left other things behind. Most disturbing of all, they were taking their children, but leaving their elderly in special ships that headed in different directions. "What does it mean?" asked the delegate from the Crystal Communes. Kethri's 4 arms gestured nervously. "I think they are not running away. I think they are getting ready for something." On the border worlds, strange reports started coming in. Automated monitoring stations went silent without sending distress signals. Long-range scouts sent to investigate simply disappeared. The few who returned told impossible stories. Captain Dexry of the border patrol ship Vigilant was one of the lucky ones. His ship had been investigating a dead monitoring post when his sensors detected something massive moving in the dark between stars. "It was bigger than our ship," he reported to his superiors. "But it made no noise, sent no signals. When we tried to scan it, our equipment failed. When we tried to communicate, there was only silence." Similar reports came from across the frontier. Ships glimpsed in the darkness. Massive energy signatures that appeared and vanished. Construction sounds where no construction should be possible. The human withdrawal was complete after 5 months and 3 weeks. The last ship crossed the boundary of known space and vanished from galactic sensors. For the first time in 30 years, the galaxy contained no humans. At first, many species celebrated. The Cathari Collective threw parties to celebrate freedom from human aggression. The ethereals composed songs about the restoration of galactic harmony. Trade agreements that humans had blocked were quickly signed, but the celebration did not last long. Crime rates began climbing as pirates realized that human patrol ships were gone. The humans had been the only species crazy enough to hunt pirates into dangerous space. Without that threat, criminal activity exploded. Worse, technological progress slowed to a crawl. Humans had been driving innovation for 3 decades. Their willingness to take risks, try new ideas, and ignore impossible problems had accelerated galactic science by centuries. Now, that acceleration stopped. 6 months after the walkout, Chancellor Vex Thari stood before the assembly again. The economic reports on his desk made for grim reading. The galaxy was stable, but it was also stagnant. Perhaps, suggested Ambassador Kethri quietly, we should consider opening negotiations with the humans. But before anyone could respond, the chamber's communication systems activated. A message was coming through on channels that had been silent for half a year. The display showed a simple star chart. 47 systems along the galactic rim were marked in red. Below the chart was a single word: quarantined. The message ended. The chamber fell silent, and somewhere in the darkness beyond known space, humanity was building something that would change the galaxy forever. 1 year had passed since the humans left, and the galaxy had never been quieter. The silence was not peaceful. It was the kind of quiet that made people nervous, like the moment before a storm. Trade routes that had bustled with activity for decades now carried only a fraction of their old traffic. The Centauri Express, once the fastest shipping lane in the galaxy, had lost 60% of its cargo flow. Human companies had handled the most dangerous runs, the tight schedules, the routes through unstable space. Without them, shipping became slower, more expensive, and much more careful. Dr. Vorthik sat in his empty laboratory on Kepler Station, staring at incomplete research. His human colleague Sarah Kim had deleted all her work before leaving. The cure for Zarati plague remained out of reach. Billions continued to die from a disease that might have been cured if the assembly had made different choices. The economic problems were just the beginning. In the outer systems, where law had always been thin, crime was exploding. The pirate clans that had hidden in deep space during the human years now operated openly. They knew that no human patrol ships would come hunting them anymore. Captain Veltar of the cargo ship Prosperity learned this lesson the hard way. His vessel was carrying medical supplies to a frontier colony when 3 pirate ships surrounded him. "Surrender your cargo," the pirate leader demanded over the communication channel. "We know you have no protection." In the old days, Veltar would have sent a distress call, knowing that human ships might respond. Human captains had a reputation for appearing out of nowhere to help strangers. But the communication channels that had once carried human voices were silent. The pirates took everything and left Veltar's ship drifting in space. The medical supplies never reached the colony. 17 children died from diseases that could have been prevented. These stories repeated across the galaxy. The slave trade, which had nearly disappeared during human years, was returning. Human ships had hunted slavers with a fury that made other species uncomfortable. Humans called it an unacceptable crime against thinking beings. They had destroyed slaver ships on sight, asking questions later without that threat. The market in sentient beings began to grow again, but the strangest reports came from the frontier. Deep space monitoring stations had been going dark for months. At first, the Galactic Navy assumed it was equipment failure. These stations were old and far from civilization. Breakdowns were common. Then the pattern became clear. The stations were not failing randomly. They were disappearing in a specific order, forming a line along the edge of known space. Something was moving through the darkness, and it was shutting down galactic sensors as it went, Commander, Zixra of the exploration ship Distant Star was ordered to investigate. Her ship was fast and well-armed, designed for deep space missions. She had been exploring the galaxy for 20 years and thought she had seen everything. She was wrong. The monitoring station at grid point 7734 had been silent for 3 weeks. When Zixra's ship arrived, the station was gone. Not destroyed, not damaged, just gone. In its place was empty space and a few scattered metal fragments. Run a full sensor sweep, Zixra ordered her crew. Something this big does not just disappear. The sensors found nothing. No debris field, no energy signatures, no trace of what had happened. It was as if the station had never existed. As they prepared to leave, the ship's navigator noticed something strange. Commander, the star charts are wrong. Explain. This system has 7 planets according to our records. I am only detecting 6. Zixra felt cold fear run down her spine. Run the scan again. The results were the same. The 7th planet, a small rocky world with no atmosphere, was missing. Like the monitoring station, it had simply vanished. Similar reports began filtering in from across the frontier. Asteroids gone from their orbits. Small moons that no longer existed. Most disturbing of all, the changes were surgical. Large planets remained untouched, but specific smaller objects had been removed with impossible precision. The Galactic Assembly ordered a full investigation. 3 fleets were dispatched to the frontier with orders to find out what was happening. 2 fleets found nothing but empty space, where monitoring stations should have been. The 3rd fleet never reported back. Ambassador Kethri stood in the Assembly's intelligence center, studying reports that made no sense. Ships vanishing without distress calls. Planets missing from their orbits. Energy readings that violated known physics. What is your assessment? Chancellor Vexthari asked. Kethri's forearms gestured uncertainty. Either we are dealing with a natural phenomenon beyond our understanding, or someone is conducting massive construction projects in deep space. Construction? Who would build in the void between galaxies? There is only one species we know of that is crazy enough to try. Kethri replied quietly. The Chancellor's skin turned a darker shade of blue. The humans. They marked 47 systems as quarantined. Every single one of those systems is on the frontier where our monitoring stations have gone dark. Reports from xenobiologists made the situation worse. Dr. Thrain, the galaxy's leading expert on human psychology, had been studying human behavior patterns since they joined the galactic community. We made a fundamental error in our assessment, she told the Emergency Council. We assumed human withdrawal was defensive. We thought they would hide and wait for us to forget about them. That is the logical response, the Chancellor insisted. Humans are not logical in the way we understand logic, Dr. Thrain explained. They are proud. They do not forgive insults easily. Most importantly, they do not accept defeat. Ever. She pulled up historical records from Earth. Look at their history. When one nation threatened another, the threatened nation did not hide. They built bigger weapons, gathered more allies, and prepared for war. But humans take this thinking further than any species we have encountered. How much further? Kethri asked, though he was not sure he wanted to know the answer. If a human village was threatened by a larger army, they would not simply build stronger walls. They would move the entire village to a hidden location, spend years building weapons, then return to destroy not just the army, but the entire kingdom that sent it. The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. You are saying they have been preparing for war this entire year? The Chancellor asked. I am saying they have been preparing for something much worse than war, Dr. Thrain replied. War implies that both sides have a chance to win. What humans are planning will not give us that chance. As if summoned by her words, the emergency communication system activated. A message was coming through on the same channels that had been silent since the quarantine warning. The display showed a simple image, a star map of the galaxy. Red markers showed the positions of every major fleet, every important station, every capital world. The level of detail was impossible. No species had intelligence networks. The comprehensive dot below the map was a single line of text. "We know where you are." The message ended. The council sat in stunned silence. Outside the station's windows, the galaxy looked peaceful. Stars shone in their ancient patterns. Trade ships followed their normal routes. Planets spun quietly around their suns. But somewhere in the darkness between the stars, humanity was building something that would change everything. The galaxy had caged the only species that had never learned to accept cages. Now they were about to learn what that meant. The first ships appeared on the edge of Galactic sensor range at exactly noon. Galactic Standard Time. Every monitoring station in the galaxy detected them at the same moment, as if they had materialized from nothing. Admiral Sarah Chun stood on the bridge of the flagship Retribution and watched the galaxy that had tried to cage her species. 18 months had passed since the walkout. 18 months of building, planning, and preparing. Now it was time for the galaxy to see what humans could accomplish when they were properly motivated. "Signal all ships," she ordered calmly. "Begin the approach." The human fleet moved forward at a pace that seemed almost casual, but appearances were deceiving. Each ship in the fleet was larger than anything the galaxy had ever built. The smallest vessels were the size of cities. The largest dwarfed moons. On the Galactic Monitoring Station Omega-7, sensor operator Clixry stared at his displays in disbelief. "This cannot be correct," he muttered, running the scan again. The readings were the same. The human fleet contained over 3,000 ships, but the total mass detected was impossible. According to his instruments, several of the larger vessels weighed more than entire planets. "Sir," he called to his supervisor, "you need to see this." Station Commander Zexanol had 30 years of experience reading sensor data. He had seen every type of ship the galaxy could build. But what approached them now made no sense. "How can a ship be that massive?" he whispered. "The materials alone would cost more than most species' entire economy." On the flagship, Admiral Chun reviewed the reports flowing in from across the galaxy. Every major government was detecting the human approach. Emergency sessions were being called. Fleets were scrambling to defensive positions. All of it was pointless, and everyone knew it. "Ma'am," reported her communications officer, "we are receiving surrender requests from 17 different species. They are asking for terms." Chan smiled without humor. "Tell them we do not negotiate. We dictate." The fleet continued its approach, and with each passing hour, the galaxy understood more clearly what it faced. The humans had not simply built ships. They had created weapons that operated on principles the galaxy did not understand. Deep space telescopes focused on the human vessels revealed impossible details. Some ships seemed to bend space around them. Others appeared to be generating their own gravity fields. Most terrifying of all, several vessels seemed to be converting matter directly into energy, powering themselves from the cosmic dust they encountered. Dr. Vex Thalen, the galaxy's leading expert on ship design, watched the feeds with growing horror. "They have not just advanced their technology," he told the Emergency Council. "They have rewritten the laws of physics." "That is impossible," Chancellor Vextari protested. "Tell that to them," Dr. Vexthalen replied, pointing at the displays. "Look at ship designation 7. Our sensors say it mass more than a gas giant, but it moves like a fighter craft. Either our instruments are broken, or humans have learned to manipulate mass itself." The Galactic Navy tried to respond. "Admiral, Korthvex of the combined fleet was considered the greatest military mind in the galaxy. He had studied human tactics during their time in galactic society and thought he understood their strategies. He was wrong. The human fleet did not approach like any military force he had ever seen. Instead of concentrating their ships for a decisive battle, they spread out across the galaxy's entire border. It was as if they intended to surround all of galactic space simultaneously. "They are dividing their forces," Admiral Korthvex told his staff officers. "Basic military doctrine says this is a mistake. We can defeat them in detail." His chief of staff, a cautious veteran named Plixstar, studied the tactical displays with unease. "Sir, what if surrounding us is not a mistake? What if that is their actual plan? Impossible. No fleet can blockade an entire galaxy." But as the human ships reached their positions, it became clear that the impossible was exactly what they intended to do. The fleet formed a sphere around galactic space, with ships positioned at carefully calculated intervals. Any vessel trying to leave the galaxy would have to pass through human-controlled space. Admiral Chun broadcast a message to every ship, station, and planet in the galaxy. Her voice was calm and professional, the tone of someone explaining simple facts. "Citizens of the galaxy," she began. 18 months ago, your representatives voted to place limitations on human expansion and activities. Today, we are here to return the favor." The transmission showed a holographic map of the galaxy. Red zones appeared around every inhabited system, marking boundaries that had not existed before. Effective immediately, all galactic species are restricted to their current territories. Any attempt to establish new colonies, mining operations, or military installations outside these zones will be prevented. Any ship that approaches human installations will be destroyed without warning. Chancellor Vex Thari tried to respond, broadcasting from the Galactic Assembly. "This is an act of war against every civilized species. You cannot blockade an entire galaxy." Admiral Chun's image appeared on every screen in the galaxy as she replied, "We are not blockading anyone, Chancellor. We are establishing proper boundaries. You wanted to limit human expansion. We have decided to limit everyone's expansion instead." "You cannot do this," the Chancellor insisted. "The galaxy will unite against you." "With what?" Chun asked. "Your largest fleet contains 800 ships. We have more than 3,000, and each of ours outmasses your entire navy. Your most advanced weapons cannot penetrate our weakest shields. Your fastest ships cannot escape our slowest interceptors." She paused, letting the implications sink in. "But we do not wish to destroy you," Chun continued. "We simply wish to ensure that you understand the new reality. The galaxy belongs to humanity now. You exist within it at our discretion." To prove her point, Admiral Chun ordered a demonstration. Ship Designation 12, one of the smaller human vessels, approached the Zethkri Home Defense Fleet. The Zethkri had the strongest military in the galaxy, with ships that had never been defeated in battle. The human ship fired a single weapon. The energy beam passed through 6 Zethkri battleships, as if they were made of paper. The ships simply ceased to exist, leaving no debris, no energy signature, no trace that they had ever been there. "The next demonstration will target inhabited planets," Admiral Chun announced. "I suggest you avoid making that necessary." The galaxy surrendered without another shot being fired. Over the following weeks, human ships established permanent positions around every major trade route, every important system, every pathway between species territories. They did not attack, did not invade, did not conquer. They simply took control. Trade between distant systems required human permission. Military movements needed human approval. Even scientific expeditions had to follow human guidelines. The most chilling aspect was the humans' complete politeness during the process. They were respectful, professional, and absolutely inflexible. When the Cathari collective tried to negotiate special arrangements for their historic trade routes, the human administrators simply said no and provided a list of approved alternatives. When the Crystal Calmians pleaded that the restrictions would mean economic collapse for their people, the human response was a detailed, economic plan that would prevent collapse while keeping them within their assigned boundaries. The galaxy had learned too late what humans meant by not accepting cages. They did not simply refuse to be limited. They eliminated the ability of others to impose limitations. Admiral Chun stood on her bridge and watched as human patrol ships began their routes through galactic space. The conquest was complete, but this was only the beginning. "Signal the second fleet," she ordered. "Begin Phase 2. In the darkness beyond the galaxy, massive construction projects continued. The fleet that had conquered galactic space was just the first wave. Humanity had bigger plans, and the galaxy was just their first step towards something much larger. The species that had voted to limit human expansion now found themselves limited in ways they had never imagined possible. 5 years had passed since the human fleet surrounded the galaxy, and the new order had settled into place like dust after a storm. The galaxy was safer, more prosperous, and more organized than ever before. It was also completely under human control. Elena Vasquez, now 73 years old, walked slowly to the podium in the Galactic Assembly Chamber. She had returned to diplomacy, but her role was very different now. Instead of representing humanity to the galaxy, she managed the galaxy for humanity. The assembly chamber looked much the same as it had during that final vote 5 years ago. The same curved walls, the same tiered seating, the same diverse collection of alien species. But everything else had changed. Where once 847 species had debated as equals, now they served as an advisory council to human administrators. The great debates that had once lasted for days were replaced by efficient briefings that lasted for hours. Decisions that had once taken months of negotiation were now made in minutes. The quarterly report shows continued improvement across all sectors, Elena announced, reading from her tablet. Crime rates are down 91% from pre-administration levels. Trade efficiency has improved by 63%. Military conflicts have been eliminated entirely. The assembled delegates listened in silence. Some faces showed satisfaction with the improvements. Others showed resentment at their loss of independence. All showed respect for the elderly human woman who had become the most powerful person in galactic history. Ambassador Kethri of the Zethkri raised one of his 4 hands. Administrator Vasquez, the Zethri Confederation requests permission to establish a mining colony in the Vega system. Elena consulted her tablet. Request denied. The Vega system falls outside your assigned expansion zone. But our people need those resources, Kethri protested. Our population is growing. Population growth beyond assigned limits is not permitted, Elena replied calmly. The Zethri Confederation may apply for increased resource allocation from human mining operations in that system. Kethri's skin darkened with frustration, but he said nothing more. Everyone in the chamber knew that arguing with human decisions was pointless. Humans did not negotiate. They administered. The new galactic order was built on simple principles that humans enforced with absolute consistency. Every species was assigned specific territories based on their current populations and resource needs. Expansion beyond those territories required human approval, which was never given. Trade between species was managed by human corporations that ensured fair pricing and eliminated the conflicts that had plagued the galaxy for millennia. Most importantly, humans had eliminated war, not through treaties or negotiations, but through the simple fact that no species could fight without human permission. Military ships required human authorization to move between systems. Weapons purchases went through human approval boards. Even military training exercises needed human observers. The result was peace, but it was the peace of the prison yard, maintained through overwhelming force rather than mutual agreement. Dr. Thrain, the xenobiologist who had warned the assembly about human psychology, now worked as an advisor to the human administration. She had watched the transformation with professional fascination and personal horror. "They have turned the galaxy into a nature preserve," she explained to a group of young scientists. "We are the animals, and they are the zookeepers. Well-fed, well-cared-for animals, but animals nonetheless. Is that necessarily bad?" asked one of her students, a young ethereal whose species had prospered under human rule. "My people live longer, healthier lives now. We have access to human medicine, human technology, human protection." Dr. Thrain's expression was sad. "You have never known freedom, so you cannot understand what you have lost. Your grandparents made their own choices, set their own goals, determined their own futures. You cannot even choose which star system to visit without human permission. But for many species, the trade was worthwhile. The galaxy had never been more stable. Pirates had been completely eliminated by human patrol ships that hunted criminals with mechanical efficiency. The slave trade had been eradicated so thoroughly that even talking about it was forbidden. Disease outbreaks that had once killed billions were now contained within days by human medical teams. Famines that had devastated entire worlds were prevented by human food distribution networks. Natural disasters that had once destroyed civilizations were managed by human engineering teams that could reshape planets as easily as others built houses on the frontier. Worlds that had suffered under the old system. Human administration was seen as salvation. Colony Administrator Vexlan of Rimworld 7 had lived through the chaos of the previous era. "Before the humans came, we lived in fear," she told visitors. "Fear of pirates, fear of starvation, fear of disease. Now we live in certainty. We know that our children will be safe, that our crops will reach market, that our sick will be healed." "Do you not miss making your own decisions?" asked a journalist from the core worlds. "We still make decisions," Vexlan replied. "We decide what to grow, how to organize our communities, who to marry, what to believe. The humans only control the big decisions, the ones that used to cause wars." It was true. Human administration focused on the macro level, while largely ignoring local customs and preferences. Species could maintain their own cultures, religions, and social structures as long as they did not conflict with human policies. For most people in the galaxy, daily life had improved dramatically. But Elena Vasquez knew that the Galactic Conquest was just the beginning. As she concluded the assembly session, she thought about the reports that crossed her desk each week. Construction projects in the void between galaxies. Massive engineering works that dwarfed even the fleet that had conquered galactic space. That evening, she met with Admiral Chun in the secure conference room aboard the administrative station. The walls displayed star charts that showed not just their galaxy, but dozens of others visible through deep space telescopes. "The Andromeda expedition is ready to launch," Chun reported. 300 ships, fully equipped for long-term operations. "And the Magellanic Clouds?" "Advanced scouts have identified 47 habitable systems and 17 species that show spaceflight capability." Elena nodded. The pattern was repeating itself across the local galactic group. Humanity had learned from their experience with the Galactic Assembly. They would not repeat the mistake of asking for permission. "Begin the expansion," Elena ordered. "Same protocols as here. Observe, evaluate, control. What if we encounter resistance?" Elena smiled the same cold smile she had worn during that final assembly meeting 5 years ago. "Then we remind them what happened to the last group that tried to put humans in cages." As the meeting concluded, Elena stood at the observation deck and looked out at the galaxy they had conquered. Millions of worlds spun peacefully in their orbits. Billions of beings lived safe, prosperous lives under human protection. It was everything the old Galactic Assembly had claimed to want. A new ship arrived at the station's docking port. Its passengers disembarked with the wonder and excitement of first contact. They were representatives of the Triangulum Galaxy, who had detected human expansion and had come to open diplomatic relations. Elena watched as human officials greeted the new arrivals with polite smiles and professional courtesy. The aliens would be given tours, briefed on human policies, and sent home with clear understanding of the new galactic order. Within a year, Triangulum would be incorporated into the human administrative zone. Its species would be assigned territories, given quotas, and placed under the same protective custody as every other thinking being in the local galactic group. Elena had lived long enough to see humanity transform from a species trying to find its place in the galaxy to the species that defined what that place would be for everyone else. The galaxy had wanted to limit human expansion. Instead, humanity had eliminated limits entirely. As she prepared for bed that night, Elena thought about the young woman who had first represented Earth to the galactic community 40 years ago. That woman had believed in cooperation, mutual respect, and peaceful coexistence. That woman had been naive. Now, Elena understood the truth that the Assembly had taught her. In a universe where someone must hold power, it might as well be the species that had never learned to accept cages. The galaxy slept peacefully under human protection, dreaming dreams that human administrators had approved. And in the darkness between the stars, humanity reached toward the next galaxy and the next, carrying the lesson they had learned in a single, final assembly vote. The universe was vast, but humans had all the time in existence to make it properly organized.